We've seen that the 22nd Encounters Documentary Festival has begun, and it is all happening virtually this time. One of the films showing at the festival is called When the Flame Speaks. It's a film discussing the intersections of art and spirituality. Take a look at this.
I truly, from the bottom of my heart, believe my ideas come through the medium of dreaming.
NgesiZulu we say umsebenzi. So performance umsebenzi, ritual umsebenzi. We're doing work.
The majority of the things that we do that end up being extremely successful, we realize they are guided by other forces outside of these practical, logical steps that we follow.
On that note, the director of the film, Ikaye Masisi, joins us now to talk a little bit more about the movie. Well, very good morning to you, and thank you very much for joining us this morning here on Weekend Dawn, Ikaye. I was watching the film yesterday, and just looking at the brief synopsis, the byline that popped up, it literally said, exploration of art as immersive vessel for spiritual expression. Ultimately, looking at the definitions of spirituality in relation to art, what emerged on this front after following the various characters throughout the film?
So basically the film was just inspired by my journey to try and understand actually how spirit has an influence upon our work, and the closest connection to kind of like that expression would be with artists, because they constantly speak of that, you know what I'm saying? So what I found out from that journey was that, spirit has a direct connection upon the work in our life, not just as artists, but also as people, So that's one of the most, revealing thing that I found out from just talking to the guys and having conversations with them, And it's quite a very personal journey, and I feel like it's a journey that's shared amongst each and everyone, even though it might be unique. Depending on the type of person and basically the type of discipline that the people are in, you know what I mean? So, so that's what I kind of found out from the guys.
And literally, most of the characters allude to being a vessel, as a bridge, transforming what is sacred and spiritual and literally birthing that into this physical realm. Ultimately, the issue of ideologies also came into the fore. So we were looking at the various perspective, an African perspective, an African ontology, and some of the paradigm shifts that need to happen in institutions at large. What are some of the discourses surrounding that scenario when we see some of the criticisms coming through? The current spaces perhaps forcing a one-track mindedness or pushing a certain agenda. What ideologies were you exploring this time round?
Well, the thing about the spaces that we're in, especially when we view sort of like our worldview, from the African perspective, you'd find that a lot of our knowledge systems are very much interconnected, So, for instance, in our space, there's no difference between physical and the spirit, So for you to try and say that you are not a spiritual being, you're just a physical being, it doesn't work in the African space, you know what I'm saying? Because that your spirit and your physicality, even just your mental attitude towards things, that embodies your whole outlook on life. So the spirit is quite important because even just in terms of our traditions, our whole connection to our ancestry, as a part of our knowledge system, it's not just something that we just found on the corner there and then we practice it whenever we think it's okay or we think it's cool, but it's a living thing. It's something that we practice within our lives, It's something that has an effect upon our lives, you know what I'm saying? So that how we right now in this modern space try to compartmentalize everything it's disingenuous towards the spirit itself, because there's certain forms of expressions or there's certain abilities, there's certain talents that we tend not to understand or we tend not to give a space for because of like how we like boxing things, you know what I'm saying? When you go to school, you have to study this and that and that and that and that. Whereas a person is quite a person is very diverse, man. A person is a very complex being, you know, and we come from a very complex history, and that's very interconnected, you know. So, I mean, those are the things that we just need to consider just as people, you know, and just our perspective on things, you know. We can't just view things from just one dimension, you know. It has to be multidimensional, it has to be inclusive, it has to be interconnected, you know what I mean? So that at least we share in the making of things, because that's what art is about, right? It's making and creating things, you know, and bringing about a world that we'd want to see and everybody would want to be part of, you know. So when we understand our interconnectedness to each other, and, you know, the space that we're in, the environment, you know, and our history, our present and our future, I mean, like, man, I mean, we can be more understanding of each other as a people, you know. So
and perhaps also tap into the
that's the feeling, you know, that's the spirit.
Now, Ikaye, you know, speaking about being an advocate for literally employing spirituality in all avenues of life, I wanted to look at the process of filming. I mean, the approach that you took, the characters that you selected. For those who have not managed to tune in and watch the film as of yet, I mean, ultimately, what approach did you take?
Well, I was kind of led and guided. Obviously, I had a template. I knew that there was something, there was a message that I needed to kind of take out, you know, and there was something as well that I was searching for as an artist. So it started from a point of curiosity to sort of like a point of trying to find a revelation about what our work means, you know, not just as artists. I used artists as just as a prototype, you know, that everybody can be able to use. But whichever discipline that you're in, whatever calling it is that you have, I think you'd be able to be connected to the work. So my template, you know, let's try and follow the story and the journey of these artists, you know, and try to, because spirit is very difficult and it's very hard to kind of materialize. You can't really see spirit. You can't say this is spirit, you know, which is the dope thing about it, you know, that ambiguity around it, that you can't really compartmentalize it. You can't really put it in one space, but it can take all forms. So the whole idea behind my whole approach towards filming this thing was just to try and get the essence of things, you know, try to get the essence of what what my characters were actually giving me, you know, and just throughout the fiction of the fiction part of the film, you know, that was meant to illustrate symbolically the type of journey or our feelings sometimes within this journey, you know, that those fears that we have, especially on this journey of fulfilling one's purpose, or on this journey of fulfilling one's calling, or on this journey of trying to self-realize oneself within this world. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we're kind of scared of that, and there's those, you know, things that make us fear our journey, make us fear our true calling, make us fear our true purpose. So it was very difficult in terms of trying to, you know, put it in picture. But I tried by all means to try and get the essence of it, you know. So yeah, it was very unconventional as well, you know. It was very unconventional. A lot of it relies on symbolism, basically.
Oh, capturing that essence, you certainly did. I mean, also just looking at the commonalities between the different characters, the journey that they were all on in terms of self-actualization. But we're going to have to leave that conversation there, but that, of course, continues 20th to the 30th of August as that virtual Encounter South African International Documentary Festival that is currently taking place. Again, filmmaker and director Ikaye Masisi speaking to us about his film When the Flame Speaks, which is currently showing, as I mentioned, at the Encounters Festival. Thank you very much for joining us here on Weekend Dawn.